I escaped from a county jail when I was 17 years old in 2006. What stories do you rarely tell because nobody will believe you? I took revenge on a rapist by stabbing him in the ear with a Q-tip. He assaulted a friend of mine who repeatedly told him to stop. He touched her, then he pinned her, then he raped her. She hasn't recovered since, and even came to distrust her closest friends. She told me his name, and I hunted him. I learned where he worked, where he lived, his schedule. In between my work shifts I would catch up to him and keep tabs. I did this for 2 weeks. When he got out of work one night, I was waiting. He didn't hear me slip up behind him, and I put the Q-tip into his right ear and slammed it in with my palm. You wouldn't believe the blood. The shrieking. I couldn't move. I just watched him writhing. We were alone. No one was around to help him or catch me. I finally gathered my wits and ran like hell. I burned the clothes, gloves and ski mask I had been wearing. I never made a sound so he couldn't identify my voice, and as much as I thought I was going to drop the one-liner, learn to listen, I held back so he couldn't tell the police any sort of motive. The girl was never questioned and neither was I, and as best I know his hearing is totally destroyed in his right ear. I have no regrets. I also never tell the story. I don't think anyone would believe it, but more importantly, I don't want anyone to know. Nor do I really want to know the consequences of my social status if people did believe it. Back in college, I had to stop seeing a girl because she turned out to be crazy. Seriously crazy. Candy and I went on half a dozen dates, and then I didn't hear from her for a couple of days. She finally showed up at school, and I asked her where she'd been. I threw a guy out the window, she laughs. She had a nice body, and would frequently be the target of sexual harassment because of it. She had great curves, and was extremely fit and athletic. There was a group of frat boy stereotypes that would constantly yell things at her, make obscene gestures at her, and generally do all they could to make her life a living hell. One day, these guys stopped her on the stairs and started harassing her again. The leader of the idiots, who we shall call Douche, decided to take things to the next level and grab her breasts. Big mistake. She grabbed him by his pop collar and tossed him out the window. Fortunately, it was open. Douche went through the screen and fell about 20 feet. He lived but was pretty banged up. She tells me this story, and I ask why she wasn't in prison. Oh, he decided not to press charges. Douche hated her because they used to date, and had gone through a bad breakup. However, he was afraid to press charges against her because she had their last lovemaking session on video. Why is he so afraid of his friends seeing him having sex, I ask. It's not like they don't know you used to date. She laughs again. Well, do you know what pegging is? What's pegging? Can't Google. At work. It's where the girl wears a strap-on and smashes the husband's shirt box from behind. I went to college at Belmont University in Nashville from 1999 until 2002. While I was there, I worked for record labels, as did a lot of my friends who were all in the music business program. Well, one buddy worked for a label called Red Hill Records as an intern for indentured servant. So, on occasion we would go to events and meet industry people and artists, as this was a small label. They had an artist that we became friends with named Katie Hudson, who was a singer-songwriter and about 17 years old. We hung out all the time since we were just 18 ourselves and had nothing to do but study and bum around coffee shops. As our friendship developed, my roommate developed a huge crush on her. She never seemed to reciprocate the feelings, so I asked her what was wrong with him, you know, trying to be a good friend, and she revealed that she liked me instead of him. So, since I wanted to be a good friend, I had to turn her down because of his feelings for her. That girl went on to be Katy Perry. I shirt you not. You gave up Katy Perry for friendship? It's like I don't even know my own gender anymore. I was young. Oh, and really stupid. Mostly stupid. God damn it. That my father was arrested for stealing $100k worth of Hershey Kisses, and during his time in jail, I found out that he was not my biological father. My biological father owned a chain of restaurants that I frequented as a kid and teenager. I found this all out a few weeks after my 18th birthday. That must have made for an awkward conversation with the rest of the inmates. What are you in for? Stealing kisses? When I was about 5 years old, I drove from Mass to Virginia with my family. Upon arrival, my legs just wouldn't work. Eventually my parents took me to the hospital. I went through various testing before being diagnosed with a flesh-eating bacteria. They wanted to amputate. Not sure if the procedure was ever scheduled, but my legs healed magically overnight. Turns out my blood sample got contaminated. What really happened was I had sat on my legs the whole car ride there. 15 years later and I've retained all appendages thus far. I'd hope they would. Yeah, no. Test twice before removing your legs. Measure twice. Cut once. When I was 19, some friends and I were visiting New York City. After picking them up from the airport, we decided it would be fun to drive down Broadway at night and see it all lit up. It was fun. We got some good pictures from the car, and around 8:30, we decided to drive home. Going northbound on the West Henry Hudson, we were talking and listening to some Journey when someone hopped the highway divider and ran right out in front of my car, stopped, and looked right at us. There was no time to stop, no time to swerve, and at 50 miles per hour he came crashing straight through the front windshield, hitting my best friend directly in the face. Immediately, I pulled over and called the police, then went to look to see if there was any slim chance the man might still be alive. I saw his leg, severed roughly 4 to 6 inches above the knee, on the road near where my car had stopped. My friend in the back seat was crying her eyes out, and my buddy was amped on adrenaline and shock in the front seat waiting for the police to arrive and remove him from the car. Walking further back, I saw a bunch of people who had stopped to help, crowded around the man. I saw his head caved in, and a dark pool underneath him before a kind old gentleman turned me away, saying you don't need to see this. In almost no time at all, the fire department was there helping my friend, who had a broken nose and shards of glass embedded in his eyes and face, out of the car. When the ambulance arrived, they tried to put him in with the man I had hit, which made him freak out and refuse, and wait for another ambulance. The cops on the scene took down my story and ran a breathalyzer on me, but I hadn't been drinking. At this time in my life, I didn't drink, then put my friend from the back seat and I in the back of a car to try to calm us down while they waited for the investigators to arrive. I had called my mom, who lived outside the city, to tell her I had been in an accident and that she should come for support. After about an hour, the investigators arrived, took time marking off the scene, and interviewed us again about what had happened. The police were very nice, and all of us were in shock. After interviewing me, I asked the investigator where I could go to the bathroom. He nodded to the trees on the side of the highway, and said to have at it. So I stood on the dimly lit bloody highway near the trees, and under the watchful eye of the 50-block traffic jam I had created, let forth the pits I had been holding in for hours. Afterwards, they took us back to the local precinct to finish paperwork and meet up with my mom and sisters who were waiting there, after having left my stepbrother with my friend who had been taken to the hospital. They had gotten lost and caught in the same traffic I caused, which is why they didn't meet us at the scene. With the paperwork done, my mom asked what had happened to the man. The officer looked at my little sisters and then asked my mom and I to step outside. He was DOA. He had been released from prison that morning. I was shocked when he extended his hand to me and thanked me for helping to clean up the city. After going to the hospital to get my friend and stepbrother, we went home for the evening. The next day, when we picked up my car from the auto shop, I saw in the meager sunlight the after image of what had transpired. Blood and brain matter all over the front of my car, an imploded front windshield, and, entering the car to take it to place to get the glass repaired, a large chunk of bloody skull in the passenger seat next to me, hidden under some napkins. My friend who had been in the passenger seat wandered over, and I told him not to look inside, but he wouldn't listen and did anyway. I think that is when the reality of what had happened sunk in for him, because his eyes grew large and he turned around silently to go sit in my mom's car. The entire experience was completely surreal, especially during the drive to get the windshield repaired. When alone, I drove the car to the shop, the wind whistling through the broken glass. TLDR, Friends and I were visiting New York. Man committed suicide on my best friend's face. I pissed in front of half the city, was thanked by an officer for killing the parolee, and drove a car full of brain matter through the streets the next day.